The Silent Hunter of Windermere. Windermere was a town that seemed to exist out of time, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Its picturesque streets, lined with quaint houses and blooming gardens, painted a picture of serenity and peace. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and the biggest excitement came from the annual fair or a particularly lively town hall meeting. But beneath this facade of tranquility, a dark secret lurked. The townsfolk had begun to whisper of strange occurrences, of people who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a chilling sense of unease. And as the disappearances grew more frequent, the town's collective fear grew, casting a shadow over Windermere that no one could ignore. Chapter 1: The First Disappearance. It began with Jacob, a well-liked handyman known for his friendly demeanor and helpful nature. He had gone out one evening to fix a broken fence at the edge of town and never returned. His tools were found abandoned, scattered on the ground, but there was no sign of Jacob. The search parties combed through the forests and fields, but it was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The town was shocked, but hopeful. People speculated he might have had an accident or simply decided to leave town without a word, though those who knew him found this hard to believe. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Jacob, hope began to wane, and fear started to take root. Chapter 2: The Pattern Emerges. The next to disappear was Emily, a schoolteacher beloved by her students. She failed to show up for class one morning, and her car was found parked neatly outside her home, keys still in the ignition. Her home showed no signs of a struggle, and her personal belongings were undisturbed. It was as if she had walked out the door and into the void. As more people vanished, an elderly man, a young couple, a teenage boy, the town's sense of safety eroded. The disappearances followed no clear pattern. The victims were of different ages, genders, and backgrounds. Panic set in, and the townspeople began locking their doors and windows, afraid to venture out after dark. Chapter 3: The Arrival. Detective Laura Harris was sent to Windermere to investigate the growing number of missing persons. A seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving cold cases, Laura was known for her meticulous nature and unwavering determination. She arrived in town to find a community on the brink of hysteria, their once vibrant spirit now overshadowed by fear. She started her investigation by speaking with the families of the missing, piecing together the final moments of each victim. The common thread was their sudden and unexplained disappearances, with no clues left behind. Laura's instincts told her that these were not random acts but the work of someone meticulous and calculated. Chapter 4: The Clues. While examining the area where Jacob had vanished, Laura found a small, almost imperceptible mark etched into a tree near his last known location, a symbol she couldn't decipher but felt held significance. She discovered similar symbols at the sites of other disappearances, hidden in plain sight. Determined to understand their meaning, Laura enlisted the help of Dr. Nathaniel Ward, a professor of anthropology at a nearby university. Dr. Ward was an expert in ancient symbols and cryptography, and after studying the marks, he identified them as variations of a Norse rune associated with the hunt and sacrifice. This isn't random, Dr. Ward concluded. The person who made these marks is following a ritual of some kind. Chapter 5: The Hunter Revealed. Armed with this new knowledge, Laura delved deeper into the town's history, uncovering a series of unsolved murders from the early 1900s. The victims had been found in the same locations where the current disappearances occurred, each marked with the same rune. The murderer had never been caught, and the case had faded into obscurity, a dark chapter forgotten by time. Laura's investigation led her to an old, abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The property had once belonged to a man named Magnus Olsson, a reclusive farmer rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals and forbidden practices. Olsson had vanished without a trace after the last of the murders, his fate as mysterious as that of his victims. Chapter 6: The Confrontation. Believing the current killer to be a copycat or a descendant of Olsson, Laura decided to stake out the farmhouse. She spent several nights watching the property, enduring the eerie silence and the feeling of being watched. On the fourth night, she saw a figure moving through the shadows, heading towards the farmhouse. Laura followed, her heart pounding as she crept through the darkness. Inside the farmhouse, she found a hidden cellar, filled with old books, strange artifacts, and the same runes she had seen before. And there, in the dim light, stood the killer, a gaunt, spectral figure with hollow eyes and a cruel smile. "You found me," he said, his voice a whisper that seemed to echo in the still air. "But it's too late. The hunt is nearly complete." Chapter 7: The Ritual. The killer, who introduced himself as Eric, claimed to be the last living descendant of Magnus Olsson. He had discovered his ancestors' journals and had become obsessed with completing the ritual Olsson had started, a ritual that required 13 sacrifices to summon a dark power and gain eternal life. "You can't stop this," Eric sneered, advancing towards Laura. "I've come too far. You, like the others, will be a part of my masterpiece." Laura, determined to end the cycle of terror, fought back with everything she had. The struggle was fierce, and the cellar seemed to come alive with the malevolent energy Eric had conjured. Shadows twisted and writhed, and the air grew thick with an oppressive darkness. In the end, Laura managed to overpower Eric, using his own ritual artifacts against him. As he lay dying, he cursed her, promising that the darkness would never be truly vanquished. With his last breath, he uttered a final incantation, and the symbols around them flared with an eerie light before fading to black. Epilogue: The Aftermath. The disappearances in Windermere ceased, and the town slowly began to heal. The farmhouse was sealed off, and the symbols were destroyed, but the memory of the terror lingered. The townsfolk, though grateful for Laura's efforts, knew that the darkness had merely been pushed back, not eradicated. Laura returned to the city, her mind haunted by the events she had witnessed. She had stopped Eric, but she knew that the legacy of Magnus Olsson still lingered, a shadow over Windermere that could one day return. Years later, a new family moved into the farmhouse, unaware of its dark history. On a quiet night, the wind carried a faint whisper, and the shadows seemed to dance once more. The hunt, it seemed, was never truly over.
Don't forget to subscribe.